Hello, my name is Christine Tapia. For this case analysis, I will provide you with a general overview of Ford Motor Company's background and issues. Ford Motor Company was founded by Henry Ford in the year 1903 in Dearborn, Michigan. Above, you can find a historical timeline of the company's small beginnings to its status today as the world's second largest industrial corporation. Ford has operations in more than 200 countries, employs 370,000 workers, and generates a revenue of approximately $144 billion worldwide. Its financial subsidiaries in North America and parts of Europe contribute $7 billion in net income with an average 5-year growth rate of 6%. Along with General Motors and Fiat Chrysler, Ford is part of the Big Three auto corporations. Because of this, the company has managed to maintain a strong global presence amidst increasing competition from foreign-based automakers by engaging in mergers and acquisitions with other automakers around the globe. These mergers allowed Ford to remain globally competitive, but also presented the downside of increasing Ford's supplier database exponentially. This caused the company's supply chain to become increasingly complex, costly, and unmanageable. The company also faced problems with overcapacity, having produced in excess of 260 million vehicles. This takes us to the general issues that Ford Motor Company is facing in this case study. Because of the steps that the company took to compete with emerging automakers, Ford is now faced with the following major issues: massive supplier database, complex network of suppliers, large number of independent dealerships in large geographical areas, weak customer service, and non-existent direct communications with customers. Ford is now faced with the need to improve and simplify their supply chain. The company has found a potential solution in their study of Dell Computer's IT-enhanced business model, which employs virtual integration. Using this strategy, Dell was able to provide better and more direct customer service and communication, increase shareholder value, and boost sales. Because of the company's immediate need to taper costs, remain globally competitive, and increase productivity and profitability, Ford Motor Company is now faced with the dilemma of deciding whether or not to follow in Dell's footsteps.
Hello, my name is Joe, and we will be discussing the main stakeholders for Ford. Most companies will have similar stakeholders, but depending on the industry, some stakeholders may differ. A stakeholder is any group, individual, or community that is impacted by the operations of a certain organization. First, we will be discussing internal stakeholders, which is any group or individuals who are directly or financially involved in the operational process. For Ford, this includes executives, board members, and employees. The executive for Ford include 13 members on the board of directors and the executive chairman and chairman of the board for a total of 14 members. There are also 14 senior leadership team positions, which include the CEO, presidents, and vice presidents. Underneath the senior leadership, you will have another 33 vice presidents. All 60 of these individuals are part of the executive group. As for the remaining management team, this will include lower level to mid-level managers, program managers, facility managers, and supervisors for their respective departments. And last of all, the employees, which in my opinion is where most of the day-to-day activities are accomplished. All three of these internal stakeholders are directly or financially involved in the operational process. As for external stakeholders, these are individuals or groups who are not directly involved in the operational process, but is still impacted by the operations of Ford. They include both Tier 1, Tier 2, and below suppliers. Ford suppliers have dramatically been reduced from several thousand in a complex networks of business relationships to 106 suppliers in 2017. Before, Ford was concerned about the cheapest price for their parts, but have instead taken a long relationship approach to simplify their logistics. Then you will have your typical creditors and shareholders. They are both very concerned with financials of the business, which affects the value of the company. When money is loaned or invested in the company, these are the individuals that will put the most external pressure on a company to perform. Next, external stakeholders are the customers. The customers are probably one of the most important stakeholders for Ford, which shows in the investment they put into trying to understand and care for this group. Ford has a variety of market research and customer care programs to keep these individuals satisfied. And finally, dealerships, which is a standard for the auto industry except with Tesla. Some of these stakeholders have more influence over Ford Motor Company than others, but all these groups have a stake in the well-being of Ford Motor Company.
Hello, my name is Tanya Flores and I will be discussing Theory and Concepts, Business Model, Ford 2000. Ford has established itself as one of the major auto companies who has staying power and brand recognition throughout the world. It has developed a global market for its vehicles with reliable dealers and suppliers to assist in manufacturing, selling, and distributing its products. Ford's customer base is substantial, and it has tremendous financial and managerial resources. All of this is backed by expertise in the auto industry. However, as new business models continue to emerge in the industry, Ford had to reevaluate and reinvent itself. The legacy systems and processes it had used for so long needed to be updated to keep up with the changes that were occurring or would occur in the future. Ford's new business model was called Ford 2000. The goals and objectives of this new model use virtual integration to assist in globalizing and redesigning corporate organizations and processes, supply chain functionality, product development, and order delivery. It was Ford's global model that pushed Ford to integrate IT into communication processes to aid in cross-global communications. In addition, when IT became recognized as a facilitator and an enabler of projects, it was also integrated into re-engineering and supply chain processes. After evaluating its extensive supply chain, Ford realized it had to make drastic changes in order to promote efficiency and quality. Ford moved to long-term relationships for direct interaction with only a few Tier 1 suppliers who would in turn work with and oversee lower-tier suppliers. This greatly improved the supply chain structure for Ford. Virtual integration also supported Ford's move from push to pull processes. Ford transitioned to a pull-based system that utilized synchronized material flow and inline vehicle sequencing. This ensured assembly of vehicles in sequence so that suppliers could be notified within a day of when supplies would be needed in the manufacturing process. And Ford inventories could be reduced. Instead of suppliers pushing materials through to Ford, Ford would now request them and pull them in from Tier 1 suppliers on a more timely, as-needed basis. This process was part of Ford's new production system, which focused on more efficient, adaptable, and responsive production operations that were based on customer demand. For the first time, Ford began involving dealerships in new ongoing forecasting of customer demand for vehicles as part of their order-to-delivery initiative. IT integration also helped create the platform for these activities. The purpose of order-to-delivery was to facilitate a 15-day delivery time from the date of a customer's order. Ford also implemented an order amendment process that provided customers the ability to change their orders. Virtual integration of Ford's new processes were developed to add value to the financial and business models. The new processes would improve supply chain and dealership communication, as well as customer satisfaction, responsiveness, and order-to-delivery time. Better production outcomes, cost efficiencies for Ford and its dealers, and supplier stability were other value-added goals. These will combine to have a positive effect on revenues, net profit, ROE, and shareholder value and confidence.
Hi, I'm Tamara Washington, and I will be discussing the symptoms and problems that Ford was facing. You've already heard about the general issues, the main stakeholders, and the theories and concepts. The main stakeholders have an interest that the new CEO, Jack Nasser, is able to develop a new business strategy for Ford. It must be mentioned that the stakeholders were, and very well, should be happy with the financial standings of Ford. The Ford Motor Company was recognized as the second largest industrial corporation of the world. Revenues toppled more than $144 billion. Yes, I said that right. Billions with a B. Ford employed over 370,000 individuals in hundreds of countries. However, the global market was changing, and as you all know, numbers can be slightly deceiving. as Tanya mentioned in the previous slide of theories and concepts, that as new business models continued to emerge in the auto industry, Ford had to reevaluate and reinvent itself. Tanya concluded that the legacy system demands and processes had been outdated for so long that they need to be updated to keep up with the changes that were occurring or would occur in the future. Terry Takai, Director of Supply Chain Management Systems, had a decision she needed to present to the senior executives. She needed to decide on whether to recommend that Ford should move forward with a manufacturing plan similar to Dell. Ford was facing some problems within its corporation. These problems resulted from the historical business models that were in place. Ford would need to develop a business strategy to place itself in a position to be able to effectively battle for an advantage in the market. They would need to implement a system to lower the cost in developing and building cars. First, there was the problem that Ford never involved their dealers in forecasting demand. This resulted in bottlenecks in the supply chain. Therefore, there was a 60-day turnaround time. With the implementation of the 5 vehicle center orders, to delivery time would be reduced from 60 days to 15. Secondly, Ford was seeing more competition enter the global market. Previously, Ford had the dominance in the market, and now they were facing more global competition from auto manufacturers such as Toyota and Honda. With changes in the process, Ford would be able to anticipate seeing their current capacity, which was estimated at about 20 million, to be dramatically reduced. This would be seen with the transition from the push to a pull process. Finally, some of the problems were primarily based upon the historical background associated with the supply chain strategy. Ford previously had multiple databases of suppliers, and the engineers weren't even allowed to discuss price with suppliers. With the new strategy, Ford would reduce its suppliers to a base of few and very capable suppliers. And the final idea to stop the competition among its own dealerships by buying them all and making them look the same was an excellent idea to create a cost saving and an environment to produce a customer satisfaction focus. This was an excellent business strategy. But now we'll move on next to Carlos, who will be discussing evaluations and criteria, and then I'll be back with a solution and implementation plan.
Hello, Professor and classmates. My name is Carlos Schottler, and I'll be going over alternatives and evaluation criteria. Alternative number 1, offer online and offline services. A pro in offering online ordering to customers is that this would attract customers who were interested in shopping online or who already shop online. This would extend Ford's reach to their clientele, which can increase their overall sales. Another pro is that this would automatically reduce inventory carrying costs, as Ford would hold what is necessary due to their customers shopping online, improving their overall forecast accuracy as well. A con in offering online and offline services is that operations would be way more time consuming, because to offer a successful and online services, a new department would need to be established and well managed, which increases overall costs. Another con is that this would increase competition within the industry, as competitors would also offer their own version of online and offline services. Another possible con is that in the 1990s, the clientele might have not been ready to embrace this new service, as online shopping wasn't as common as it is today. And if customers decided not to shop online, the return on investment could be terribly low. Alternative number 2, realign purchasing department with R&D department. The pros of realigning Ford's purchasing department with the research and development department is that it would lower Ford's direct cost, resulting in savings. This will also allow suppliers to be more competitive amongst themselves, which also lowers costs. This will increase Ford's overall efficiencies amongst their supply chain, as suppliers can transport their supplies to Ford's manufacturing plants a lot faster. The cons about realigning these departments is that there isn't a guarantee on such improvements, because there would need to be a great relationship with effective communication between both departments not to risk losing a competitive advantage. Alternative number 3, adapt virtual integration method. Pros would be Ford would be more efficient and effective. They would be more efficient because Ford would enhance their OTD from 65 days to 15 days, which is a significant difference. The cons to adapting a virtual integration method is that Ford would ultimately have to change their current business model. This would initially increase costs, also since this would be an unaware territory for Ford. This increases their overall risk to fail. Alternative number 4, do nothing. Pros on doing nothing is that up to this point, Ford has successfully established a consistent business model. Therefore, a change wasn't absolutely necessary. Another pro by doing nothing is that Ford would avoid any additional costs in searching for alternatives. Reiterating a famous quote, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yet, there are a few cons in doing nothing. Doing nothing will allow competitors to get ahead by embracing their alternatives, and this can lead to Ford losing their competitive advantage. Another con of doing nothing is that Ford would not be addressing their existing problems. So instead of finding solutions to their current issues, they just be maintaining them.
Hi, I'm Tamara Washington, and I'm back with you to discuss the solutions and implementation plan. As I promised you that I'd be back after Carlos. And as a reminder, you've already listened to the general issues of Ford Motor Company, the main stakeholders who I told you have the main interest in how the company proceeds, the theories and concepts, the symptoms and problems that I brought forth to you, and most recently, Carlos presented you with the pros and cons of alternatives that Ford Motor Company could take on its business strategy or its business model. Basically, Ford could take some initiatives to continue to acquire dominance in the market. As Carlos suggested, Ford is going to need to take some innovative and technological approach to the rapid changes that are happening in the industry and in the global market throughout. To do nothing could mean that Ford would remain stagnant and the global competition could remain to rise and eliminate them completely. First of all, Ford Motor Companies has been one of the leading industrial organizations in the world thus far. However, it is important that Ford Motor Company increases their economies of scale. Immediately, Ford would need to reevaluate its supply base, implement a centralized system to accommodate second-tier suppliers, and review this for cost efficiency. In coming years, Ford will need to invest in product development to avoid getting help from the government like other automobile manufacturers experienced during the downside of the economy. Ultimately, it's best for Ford to develop a unifying plan, which we can consider as the One Ford plan. Under this solution, it would, number one, bring all Ford employees together as a global team. This would eliminate the competition. Initially, this was done when Ford bought out all of the dealerships so that it would eliminate the competition among the dealers. Well, we're going to go ahead in our implementation, bring that back and go ahead and let's focus on Ford manufacturing and not in the buying and selling business. This would lead us to number two, for Ford to leverage its unique automotive knowledge and assets. Then three, build cars and trucks that people want and valued and needed, basically. We've come into a world where it's not so much the big station wagons anymore. Not everyone wants the big trucks or the big gas guzzlers. We're moving on to hybrid cars and even smaller cars, which you will see happen in the future. So this would be, again, part of the number 3 plan of the One Ford, is to build cars and trucks that people want and value. 4 is to arrange the significant financing necessary to pay for it all. And again, this would fall under the economies of scale and making sure that our finances are in order. Ford would also need to reduce, under this plan, the number of global platforms from 27 to 9 in an effort to bring forth more efficiency. This would aid in the idea of creating a global team. Having the multiple global centers fosters an environment of competition from within. Unifying employees as a global team would eliminate the competition and create an environment where the employees could work together with more ease and they wouldn't feel the tension amongst each other with presenting new ideas. Another idea Carlos suggested would fall under the implementation program is using online and offline services. The One Ford plan would focus on the one team, one plan, and one goal, which would return Ford's competitive edge and forward-facing outlook, allowing the company to return to its operating profitability. Now we'll move on to the final slides, and that'll be it for me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Christine again. This time I'm presenting an evaluation and review of the project based on information presented by my group mates in previous slides. Let me circle back to the initial question of whether or not Ford should implement Dell's integrated supply chain model. From our analysis of Ford Motor Company scenario, we were able to deduce that Ford is much too different of a company to replicate Dell's model. It would be completely unwise of Ford to completely overhaul its operations to mimic Dell's. This would only contribute to higher operational costs. It's also not feasible to eliminate dealerships as the middleman, as people are not ready to purchase vehicles completely online. Can you imagine not test driving a car you would buy? However, Ford may benefit greatly from a partial integration of Dell's efficiencies that fit within Ford's operational framework. From the last slide presented by Tamara, we presented a solution with a theme of One Ford. This plan aims for an all-hands-on-deck approach, integrating Ford's human, physical, technical, customer, and financial assets to the company's improvement of its supply chain and operations. Our recommendation to implement One Ford puts the customer at the center of supply chain operations that is much more seamless, coordinated, and integrated. Customer service rises to the forefront with a strategy ensuring that Ford's customers are heard and their opinions are valued. Customer input and their ideas of value also play a central role in decisions around manufacturing of vehicle units, alleviating the enormous surplus that the company had created due to overcapacity. Global platforms are also condensed to fewer, more centralized units, solving the initial main issues of massive and complex supplier databases and global coverage by individual dealerships that is far too spread out to manage successfully. Our implementation plan suggests that Ford is able to turn around its supply chain deficiencies in a few years. To continue the company supply chain timeline that I presented on the general issue slide, we can extend this timeline to include key milestones that the company has achieved with the idea of partial integration. In the early 2000s, Ford began to implement strategies to supplement its global competitiveness. It acquired Land Rover, launched Visteon, and increased stakes in the Hertz company. It experienced a setback in 2001 when it incurred a loss of $5.45 billion, spurred by the previous year's recall of 300,000 vehicles to replace 13 million tires by Firestone, Ford's supplier of truck and SUV tires. All looked dim for the Ford Motor Company again. But in 2006, Alan Mulally was named CEO of Ford Motor Company. His immediate step was to unveil One Ford to encourage company growth. Towards the end of that year, Ford managed to secure $46 billion of total new liquidity. With Mulally at the helm, the company allocated this new liquidity between restructuring and company reserves in case of unforeseen events. Very smart on his part. The economic downturn of 2007 to 2010 proved to be a challenge for Ford and many other corporations in the global auto industry. It was during that time that Ford decided that it needed to consolidate its 27 platforms worldwide. It proved to be a hugely efficient operational strategy for the company, allowing Ford to remain financially sound despite the plunge in global economics. In 2012, Ford's global platforms were reduced to 12, then to 9 in 2016. The company is inching towards its current target of 8 global platforms. In 2014 and 2015, Ford launched 40 new or upgraded vehicle alternatives worldwide as a response to customer feedback and demand. These launches range from economy-sized cars to large SUVs, and allowed Ford to save on costs due to specific target marketing. From the developments leading to today, it looks like Ford has managed to revolutionize its supply chain by partially implementing some of Dell's efficiencies, like better purchasing, inventory management, and close customer relations. In the next slide, Ophelia will present Ford's operations as it currently stands.
Thank you, Christine, for summarizing the evaluation and review. Please allow me to wrap up our group's presentation with Ford's current status update. As Ford Motor Company continues to expand from an auto company to an auto and mobility company, Ford remains focused on building on its global leadership in different types of vehicles, from trucks, vans, to performance vehicles. As you may know, the automotive supply chain is one of the most complex of any industry. That one company can actually have 10 tiers of suppliers and sub-suppliers as initially discussed by Tanya. Right now, Ford has more than 100 billion spending into their 62 manufacturing sites and thousands of suppliers and sub-suppliers of vehicle parts and components around the world. You can actually refer to the table I have presented on my right side to confirm these figures. In order to achieve their performance goal, Ford sees the importance of building and maintaining strong and mutually beneficial relationships with a diverse range of suppliers as they help in lowering cost, improve quality, and make progress toward sustainability goals. Their unceasing advocacy to a cleaner and healthier environment carries through their initiative of partnering with their suppliers in an effort to reduce carbon emission, conserve water and energy, and cut down on waste. Ford maintains dialogue with their key strategic suppliers through their Aligned Business Framework, or ABF, which is Ford's strategic purchasing business model that was launched in 2005. You can see at the bottom part of this diagram that as of to date, Ford has 174 ABF suppliers from just 67 suppliers since its launch in 2005. This only proves that Ford has been actively pursuing this program to ensure proper working conditions and responsible environment management system throughout their value chain. These agreements actually spell out business practices designed to increase future collaboration, including phased-in upfront payment of engineering and development costs, extend sourcing, and data transparency. The ABF leverages Ford's effort to maintain human rights and environmental responsibility issues in its supply chain in a more collaborative, in-depth, integrated, and aligned manner. Thank you.